for mature.
Welcome back, everyone, to another segment of 2Industry. I'm Mike Games.
No,
This
he's
is
not. Don't believe him.
Hill, and that's Andrick, I think, under the hat.
Stay in frame, Andrew.
And so we have actually quite a bit to talk about. It's been a while. But yeah, this segment we're actually going to talk about pretty much the year overall. It's been a pretty interesting year.
We missed a lot of videos, and now we got to talk about all the stuff that we missed this whole time.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so I mean, it was an interesting year. A lot happened. We've had the consoles for a year already.
Underdogs coming back.
We've had underdogs. We've had Gamergate. We've had Gate Gamers, and we've
had disappointments.
We've had disappointments.
Lots of disappointments.
We had overachievers. We've had way underachievers.
Yeah,
and we had late achievers, aka Destiny. So
yeah. Guess.
What do you want to start off with first, Mike?
What a disappointing year it was in gaming, actually, for having the new consoles.
Okay.
I mean, I was trying to think about, some of the top games. I was like, the top 10 games.
Right.
I couldn't think of 10 games.
Well, here's the thing is, like, with this new generation of consoles, I think a lot of the companies try to play it safe, and they try to go with the IPs that they were used to, because they didn't really want to. It could have been two things. It could have been that they didn't really understand the power of the consoles yet, because usually it takes time for them to be able to understand that. And a lot of them don't reach that potential until the end of the console cycle because they're so fucking used to playing it safe. And that's probably what happened this time. Is like a lot of them played it safe. They went with the IPs that they were familiar with, or they felt their customers are familiar with.
Yeah.
And they didn't really, because everything is such on a timeline. They had to kind of have enough time to make the game rather than actually testing the limits of what they can actually do.
Right. You got a lot of remastered because of that.
Right.
So. And again, that's not really doing the people that have the new consoles justice.
Right, exactly. So, like all the game, and we said this during E3, is that all of these games that they were showing at E3 that looked fantastic, that was really pushing the idea of what a game could be. Mm-hmm. Those are not coming until next year, right?
Right.
Everybody's like, man, they're like just freaking beating off to No Man's Sky,
which isn't coming for a while.
Right, it's not coming for a while, and all these games that we were like, man, that is a great idea. We kind of knew it wasn't coming this year, so
right. Yeah. But I mean, you got something like Grand Theft Auto 5, which is again a port. That's probably one of the biggest games this year.
Yeah,
but it's a port.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's a port with better graphics and new soundtrack. Right. So I mean, it's still a great game, but it's not what we wanted.
Because look at your games that you had. You had your typical Call of Duty. You had Halo, aka Destiny.
And Halo Master Chief Collection.
And Halo Master Chief Collection.
A bunch of remastered.
Right. And they played it safe because a lot of these, I don't know from a developer standpoint, because this is the times where I wish I was in like the developer network industry so I can understand what's going on. But it seems like they were like, okay, well, we have to have something to sell to make money on these new generation consoles. So let's just put out fucking remastered something so we can spend the time to develop a better IP, I guess. Do you think that's what they're?
Well, I mean, that's very true. I mean, I agree with all that, but the one company that didn't do that, the one company that didn't have remasters and this year was Nintendo.
Yeah.
Everything that they've done has been pretty much right on par.
Yeah, this is at their time that they were like.
I mean, again, it took 2 years, right? Because last year you
had
remasters and little bitty games, but this year, man, they just came out swinging.
Yeah,
and it took a while to get there.
It took the second half of the year for them to do that, but I mean, like you said, the underdogs were coming back, and Nintendo definitely came back in a big way. We'll talk about it a little later, but they even won a few awards during the game show awards this year. But yeah, and then a lot of these games that we were looking forward to, also, it seems like because they're trying to get used to the power and everything, they pushed them back to a few months or next year.
Right.
Well, they had to. I mean, because the games they released this year were just crap. They came out buggy as hell.
Assassin's Creed.
Everything.
Well, okay, like here's the thing with Assassin's Creed Unity. Okay,
first of all, just Ubisoft in general.
Well, because
like every game from what was the one game with the guy with the coat?
Oh,
Watch Dogs came out bad. I mean, it was just not a very good game.
Because a lot of their ideas are ambitious. Okay.
Well, they spread themselves too thin this year. They had like 5 games released, and 2 of those games.
That was their model. Yeah. And in fact, whenever they announced that they were going to do that, especially with Assassin's Creed, I'm not surprised that it was going
totally unprofessional.
I'm not surprised that it was going to fail. Or start failing, because it takes a lot of money and lots of manpower to be able to constantly put out that type of product and expect to have high level success,
and do
it well every freaking year, and have multiple IPs, and then try to come up with a unique ideal to really push gaming forward, which is kind of Ubisoft's backstory.
Right.
They're going to burn themselves out, and
I think they did. I mean, look at how Assassin's Creed Unity came out. I mean, I heard Rogue. I don't even want to touch it. I bought both games.
Well, it's not even that, right? You have Far Cry on top of that.
Right.
You have their exercise games on top of that.
Right.
And none of them have come out and like, are these the games of the year? No.
And what's unique about Ubisoft is that they don't work as like a publisher where they go and buy other developers. You know what I'm saying? They do everything in-house.
Right.
I would love to be a fly on that fucking wall watching these developers trying to do all this shit. There's no way. They've got to be like under pressure or something.
Oh,
sure. And usually you can see it in the products, right? It's like when shit is buggy and things are rushed. That's an indication of what's going on.
And I was really disappointed because I was really looking forward to Unity. And when I started playing it, I was like,
ass creeds.
Yeah, and actually, this character I was able to kind of get behind a little bit more. He was more charismatic. He reminded me a little bit of Ezio. But it's just
because they're European.
Maybe.
I'm laughing at because I've heard that a lot where people are like, "Yeah, this Assassin's Creed character, he's so charismatic." I'm like, he's a fucking killer. Whatever.
But I mean, the previous ones you couldn't get behind. I mean, maybe Edward in Black Flag, but Connor was just really dry and just nobody liked him. So with this one, I think they came back, but they just rushed it. They wanted to put the 2 games out at the same time, which I think was a huge mistake.
Well, I don't think it would have been a huge mistake if they would put it on the same console, or maybe even had the other one as DLC.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, I mean, it really felt, for people that love the series, like you and me and Hild, he knows us and how we feel about
it. We know you guys take all of Metal Gear Solid's ideals. I know.
It's true. And but when you buy both of those when you buy both those games, and then you're like, well, they just had this one game, Rogue, that I was able to get on Black Flag, the exact same game that was just reskinned.
Right.
Why couldn't you put that on the same console, or
because
there's DLC, or like buy get half off?
Because they wanted money.
Exactly.
It's just a money grab.
Well, not only that, I think they kind of also didn't want some of the gamers that haven't upgraded to the new consoles feel left out. So maybe they said, okay, let's make it exclusive to the old games, and then we'll give the new console.
Well, hopefully they're like, hey, if you bought Rogue, they'll give you like, hey, you can download the free one. But I doubt it. I doubt they'll do that. Or maybe $10.
Well, with Unity, that's what they did. It was so buggy. They said, okay, we're scrapping the season pass. Oh, you bought the season pass? Here, have a free game on us. And it was like Watch Dogs, Far Cry 3. Or Far Cry 4, sorry.
It's such a mess because it's just I don't know if it's just, I know I keep talking about like the business aspect of it, but it's just like, man, you guys have got to get your shit together, because we come from a time where developers, they made these games and they made sure that everything was working well before they actually rolled them out, and we didn't have to worry about complaining and getting free downloads and having to have games, have them send us games to compensate for their failures and stuff. Because I mean, we're at the age now, we don't have time for this shit, And I want a good game. I want it to work well. I don't have to deal with that. I'm going to bring up Metal Gear Solid again. I don't have to deal with that whenever I'm dealing with Metal Gear Solid, Right. So because Hideo Kojima knows the level of quality, and he takes forever to make his games, and he basically tells the industry go fuck itself when they're like, well, you got to hurry up. He's like, wait,
Right.
take and and then that's when he gives us.
Typically with Japanese games, there really aren't patches. I mean,
that's a good point. You see, maybe it's a cultural thing.
It is a cultural thing. Like, yeah, Ubisoft, you got American.
Well, they're French, right? Canadian too.
Sorry if you're French.
Yeah, I'm not. No, I'm part French, so I don't care.
Yeah, I like fries.
Hey, no kidding. You are part French.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess moving on. So that was only a little bit. Also, the consoles have been out for a year.
Right. Consoles have been out. There've been a few updates for a few consoles.
Well, I guess this is a dumb question. I was gonna say, who do you think is kind of in the lead as far as consoles? Even though we're in this kind of.
It's kind of funny because Sony was leading.
I still think it's Sony.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, how do you disagree on that, Mike?
They had a huge push during the whole Black Friday and the holidays coming. It seemed like Xbox really ended up kind of catching up.
Only in the U.S.
That's true.
Because Americans are fanboys for Xbox. But.
Well, they were probably waiting for more games, and it's true. Like Xbox has done more for. It seems like it's done them better being second place than being first place the whole time because they're doing updates all the time. They're servicing their fans,
Mm-hmm.
Whereas PlayStation, I still think they're doing things right, but they're doing it from number one place. So, the one thing I thought they did great that kept them number one in my heart because I was really leaning towards Xbox near the end.
Yeah.
Because they did make me, you go into beta and all that stuff and get updates.
Right.
But what PlayStation did is they brought E3 back at the end of the year, which got me excited for PlayStation again.
So you're talking about the PlayStation experience.
Yeah. I mean, like if Xbox would have done that as well, I think I would have been more excited about that too. But since PlayStation's like, this is what we got coming next year, and it's going to be, and here are the exclusives for our console.
Do you think that was also kind of like a move on their part because they're like, oh shit, Xbox is, gaining traction. Let's do something.
Whatever the case is, I mean, it very well could have been that, but I think it was more of like the marketing in that was just like, hey, it's the holiday season, not just in the U.S. but all over the world.
Right.
This is what we got coming for you. Buy our console, and these are exclusives that are coming for you.
Did they not do that?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's why I think they're number one. At least Xbox was winning until that PlayStation experience came out. So.
I feel that PlayStation was leading the whole time ever since they, announced their console. They did everything right except the whole. They still got to get the streaming aspect. All these little gimmicks. There's so many I could list that they have to get right. But as far as just
the rented games was
that's what I meant. Yeah,
it was still in beta. It never really officially.
But you got to get your shit together.
But the prices on that is just stupid.
And I think that's what we were saying too. We were like, man, if they just can get the price right, it would be perfect. And they fucked it all up.
Yeah.
It fell apart. But I still feel like they led correctly because they hit it on the price point, which Americans are all about, and they had a better experience and they really focused on the indie developers and they just did everything right. And Xbox was floundering because they, forced people to have to connect it first and then they backtrack. And that's the last thing you want to do as a company is start backtracking on your product. And they just led the whole time. Now, with that being said, Nintendo, maybe they're staying the course and they're finally hitting the part where they're what they were focused on, like getting the great games to come out. Maybe they're hitting that turning point, and maybe they could be coming back in the race and damaging some folks in the future.
Yeah,
I think it's great with even older hardware that they're still a competitor.
That says a lot.
It says a lot about the quality of their games, like Bayonetta 2, right?
Right.
It was ranked or nominated to be one of the best games of the year.
It came with Bayonetta.
Yeah, and it came with Bayonetta. I mean, they did. Although it took a while to get out,
right.
it was worth the wait. Like it was I didn't have to do a patch or anything. It was
right.
Ready to go.
Yeah, Nintendo never has to deal with that.
Yeah. So that they'll push things back for years.
Yeah.
Which is, you'd rather have that. You had some issues with Smash Brothers and things like that, and I think basically that has to do with they're not used to online stuff because they're not. That's not the type of company they are.
Right.
But they'll get there.
I think next year they're going to have a pretty big year. Mario is going to have its 30th anniversary, Super Mario Brothers. But getting back to this year, the consoles, we've had them for a year. they've definitely come a long way with their interfaces and everything. They feel a lot better. I mean, Microsoft still needs a little bit of work, I think.
They just need to redesign their layout.
What do you mean?
The layout of the actual Xbox user interface.
Yeah.
I still don't like it.
Yeah, I agree.
It's still not like, oh, where did this game
That's
go?
very Windows.
Yeah, it's very Windows. It needs to get away from that. They need to think outside of
basically what I'm saying, and you know this, Andrew, is like they would have to change their whole idea of the user interface across all
DOS, and then I want to type in directory, and I want to be like,
what if they secretly had that in their Xbox, and you type in tree, and shows all the games like all the way down.
Just be like, oh, there we go.
Damn, we dated ourselves,
PlayStation made some updates to their interface. Like now, it doesn't show every single game and everything.
Yeah,
they kind of
that still needs work too.
It does, but they kind of at least condensed and fixed it up a little bit.
Man, I was in the store being like, man, that Nintendo Wii U doesn't look too bad right now. Because I'm obviously going to get a PlayStation 4, but it's like, and you know me, I'm a big Nintendo fanboy. I'm so disappointed in them. They just disappointed me so bad.
But they're calling you.
No, they're like, okay, we know we screwed up. We're
Smash Brothers, bro.
I know, Smash Bros is like it. That's like the crack game right there.
It won. Well, we'll get to that. And then also, probably the biggest and stupidest thing that happened this year was the whole Gamergate scandal.
Should we talk about that in this segment, or should we talk about it in the next segment?
We could break it up. That might be a whole conversation.
Okay, let's do that. In the overall view of the consoles and the environment of the gamers, what they had to go through this entire year, and then we'll talk about Gamergate this next segment, and then we'll talk about something in the third segment.
All right, so keep watching. Stay tuned, guys. Till next time.
Gamergate coming up. Ba-da-da!